Section 14 of Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery by Author Payne. Chapter 5. Salads and Sandwiches. Salads and Sandwiches. Probably the most patriotic Englishman will admit that, on the subject of salads, we can learn something from the French. During the last half-century, a great improvement has taken place on this point in this country. Many years ago, it was the fashion to dress an English lettuce, resembling in shape an old umbrella, with a mixture of brown sugar, milk, mustard, and even anchovy and Worcester sauce, and then add a few drops of oil, as if it was some dangerous poison, like prussic acid, not to be tampered with lightly. The old-fashioned lettuces were so hard and crisp that it was difficult to chew them without making a noise somewhat similar to walking on a shingly beach. In modern days, however, we have arrived at a stage of civilization in which, as a rule, we use soft French lettuces instead of the hard gingham-shaped vegetables, which somehow or other our grandfathers ate for supper with a whole lobster, seasoned with about half a pint of vinegar, and then slept none the worse for the performance. The first point for consideration, if we wish to have a good salad, is to have the lettuces crisp and dry. Old-fashioned French cookery books direct that the lettuce should never be washed. The stalks should be cut off, the outside leaves removed and thrown away, and the lettuce itself should then be pulled in pieces with the fingers, and each piece wiped with a clean cloth. This is not always practicable, but the principle remains the same. You can wash the lettuce leaves without bruising them. You can dry them by shaking them up lightly in a large clean cloth, and you can spread them out and let them get dry an hour or two before they are dressed. Another important point to be borne in mind is that a salad should never be dressed till just before it is wanted to be eaten. If by chance you put by the remains of a dressed salad, it is good for nothing the next morning. Finally, the oil must be pure olive oil of the best quality, and to ensure this, it should bear the name of some well-known firm. A good deal of the oil sold simply as salad oil, bearing no name, is adulterated, sometimes with cottonseed oil. Salad, French lettuce, plain. Clean one or more French lettuces, throw away all the leaves that are decayed or bruised. Place these in a salad bowl, and, supposing we have sufficient for 2 persons, dress the salad as follows. Put a saltspoonful of salt and half a saltspoonful of pepper into a tablespoon. Fill the tablespoon up with oil, stir the pepper and salt up with a fork, and pour it over the lettuce. Now add another tablespoonful of oil, and then toss the lettuce leaves lightly together with a spoon and fork. Allow 1 tablespoonful of oil to each person. This salad would suffice for 2. Be sure and mix the lettuce and oil well together before you add any vinegar. The reason of this is that if you add the vinegar first, it would soak into the lettuce leaves, making one part more acid than another. Having well mixed up the lettuce and oil, add half a tablespoonful of vinegar, mix it once more, and the salad is dressed. In France, they always add to the lettuce before it is dressed 2 or 3 finely chopped fresh tarragon leaves. Dried tarragon can be used, but it is not equal to fresh. If you have no tarragon, it is a great improvement to use tarragon vinegar instead of ordinary vinegar. Tarragon vinegar is sold by all grocers at 6d per bottle. It is also often customary to rub the salad bowl with a bead of garlic, or rub a piece of crust of bread with garlic, and toss this piece of crust up with the salad after it has been dressed. Garlic should never be chopped up, but only used as stated above. A good French salad is also always decorated with 1 or more hard-boiled eggs, cut into quarters long ways. These are placed on the top of the lettuce. Salad, English, lettuce. The ordinary English salad is made either with French or English lettuces, and is generally dressed as follows. 1 or 2 tablespoonfuls of cream or milk, a teaspoonful of made mustard, 2 tablespoonfuls of vinegar, pepper, and salt. there are many people still living in remote parts of the country who prefer this style of dressing. Salad, English, mixed. The old-fashioned English mixed salad generally consisted of English lettuce cut up into strips crossways, to which was added mustard and cress, boiled beetroot, chopped celery, spring onions, radishes, and watercress. It is by no means a bad mixture when dressed with oil, and of course it can be dressed at à l'anglaise. It makes an excellent accompaniment to a huge hunk of cheese, a crusty loaf, a good appetite, and a better digestion. Salad, mayonnaise. This is generally considered the king of salads, and it can be made an exceedingly pretty-looking dish. Take 2 or more French lettuces, clean and dry them as directed above, and take the small heart of one lettuce about the size of a small walnut, uncut from the stalk, so that you can stand it upright in the middle of the salad, raised above the surface. Arrange all the softer parts of the leaves on the top of the salad, so as to make as much as possible a smooth surface. Make some mayonnaise sauce, thick enough to be spread like butter, and mass this little mound in all the surface of the middle of the salad. Round it with a thin layer of the sauce, so that it looks like the top of a mold of solid custard. Ornament the edge of the salad with hard-boiled eggs cut in quarters, and place between the quarters slices of pickled gherkins and stoned olives. Take a small teaspoonful of French capers, dry them on a cloth, and sprinkle a few of them about an inch apart on the white surface. Next, chop up very finely about half a teaspoonful of parsley, and see that this doesn't stick together in lumps. Place this on the end of a knife and flip the knife so that the little green specks of parsley fall on the white surface. Next, take about half a saltspoonful of finely crumbled bread and shake these in a saucer with 1 or 2 drops of cochineal. This will color them a bright red, and they will have all the appearance of lobster coral. Place these red breadcrumbs on the end of a knife and let them fall over the white surface like the parsley. The little red and green specks on the white background make the dish look exceedingly pretty. Before mixing the salad all together, add a tablespoonful of tarragon vinegar or lemon juice. Tomato salad. For making tomato salad, you require red, ripe tomatoes. The smoother they are, the better, but the chief points are very ripe and very red. Never use those pink, crinkly tomatoes which look something like milk stained with plum juice. If tomatoes are picked unripe and then allowed to ripen afterwards, they become rotten and worthless. Slice up half a dozen or more tomatoes. Sometimes it will be necessary to remove the core and pips, sometimes not. Add a little oil, a little vinegar, and some pepper and salt. Tomato salad is one of the few that are very nice without any oil at all. Of course, this is a matter of taste. Some persons slice up a few onions and add to the tomatoes. In addition to this, you can add some slices of cold potatoes. In this latter case, heap the potatoes up in the middle of the dish in the shape of a dome, sprinkle some chopped parsley over the potatoes, put a border of sliced onion round the base, and then a border of sliced tomato outside that. This makes the dish look pretty. Many persons rub the dish or salad bowl with a bead of garlic. This is quite sufficient to flavor the salad, but never chop garlic for salads. Egg salad. Egg salad consists of an ordinary salad made with French lettuces with an extra quantity of hard-boiled eggs. If you want to make the salad look very pretty on the top, cut up the lettuces and dress them with oil and vinegar in the ordinary way. Make the tops of the lettuces, which should be placed in a round salad bowl, as smooth as you can without pressing them down unnecessarily. Now take 6 hard-boiled eggs, separate the yolks from the whites, powder the yolks and chop up the whites small. Sprinkle a ring of yellow round the edge of the salad bowl, say an inch in width, then put a ring of white round and place the remainder of yolk in the middle, almost up to the center. Have the center about 2 inches in diameter. We now have a yellow center surrounded by a broad white rim, as of course there is more white than yellow, and an outside yellow ring which meets the white china bowl. Reserve about a teaspoonful of pieces of finely chopped white and put them in a saucer, with a few drops of cochineal, and shake them. This turns them a bright red. Sprinkle these red specks very sparingly on the white, and take about half a teaspoonful of chopped blanched parsley and sprinkle these green specks on the yellow. This makes the dish look pretty. German salad. German salad is made from cold boiled vegetables chopped up. In Germany, it is made, according to English ideas, from every vegetable you have ever heard of, mixed with a number of vegetables you have never heard of. In England, it can be made by chopping up boiled carrot, turnip, cabbage, cauliflower, potato, French beans, Brussels sprouts, whole, celery, raw onion, raw apple, etc. In fact, in making this vegetable salad, the motto should be, the more the merrier. In addition to this, you will find that they add what is known as sauerkraut. This latter is not adapted as a rule to English palates. The salad is mixed with oil and vinegar in the ordinary way, the Germans adding much more vinegar than we should care for in this country. The salad is decorated at the finish with boiled beetroot. It is very pretty to cut the beetroot into triangles, the base of the triangle touching the edge of the salad bowl, the point of the triangle pointing inwards. Gut a star out of a good slice of beetroot and place it in the center of the bowl. Sprinkle a little chopped blanched parsley over the surface of the mixed vegetables. Endive salad. Endives come into season long before lettuces and are much used abroad for making salads. The drawback to endive is that it is tough, and the simple remedy is to boil it. Take 3 or 4 white hot endives, throw them into boiling water slightly salted. When they get tender, take them out and instantly throw them into cold water, by which means you preserve their color. When quite cold, take them out again, drain them, dry them thoroughly, and pull them to pieces with the fingers. Now place them in a salad bowl, keeping the whitest part as much as possible at the top. Place some hard-boiled eggs round the edge and sprinkle a little chopped blanched parsley over the white endive. You can, if you like, put a few spikes of red beetroot between the quarters of eggs. It is a great improvement to rub the salad bowl with a bead of garlic, or you can rub a crust of bread with a bead of garlic and toss this lightly about in the salad when you mix it. Salsify salad. Boiled salsify makes a very delicious salad. Take some white salsify, scrape it, and instantly throw it into vinegar and water, by which means you will keep it a pure white. Then, when you have all ready, throw it into boiling water, slightly salted. Boil it till it is tender. Throw it into cold water, and when cold, take it out, drain it, and dry it. Cut it up into small half-inch pieces, or put it in whole in sticks into a salad bowl. Sprinkle a little chopped blanched parsley over the top. Dress in the ordinary way with oil and white French vinegar, and be sure to use white pepper, not black. If white wine vinegar is objected to, the juice of a hard fresh lemon is equally good, if not better. Potato salad. Potato salad is generally made from the remains of cold boiled potatoes. Of course, potatoes can be boiled on purpose, in which case they should be allowed to get cold in the water in which they were boiled. New potatoes are far better for the purpose than old. Cut the potatoes into slices and place them in a salad bowl with a little finely chopped blanched parsley. You can also add some finely chopped onion or shallot. If you do not add these, you can rub the bowl with a bead of garlic. Sprinkle some more chopped parsley over the top of the salad and ornament the edge of the bowl with some thin slices of pickled gherkins. A few stoned olives can also be added. Dress the salad with oil and vinegar in the ordinary way. Asparagus salad. Cold asparagus makes a most delicious salad. It is needless, perhaps, to say it is made from cold boiled asparagus. The best dressing for asparagus salad is somewhat peculiar, and is made as follows. Take, say, an ounce of butter, put it in a saucer, and melt it in the oven till it is like oil. Now mix in a teaspoonful of made mustard, some pepper, salt, and a dessertspoonful of vinegar. Stir it all together, and as it gets cold, it will begin to get thick. Dip all the green part of the asparagus in this, and lay the heads gently without breaking them in a vegetable dish, with the white stalk resting on the edge of the dish and the green part in the middle. Let the salad get perfectly cold and then serve. Of course, the sauce clings to the asparagus. The asparagus is eaten with the fingers like hot asparagus, a custom now generally recognized. Artichoke salad. This applies to French artichokes, not Jerusalem. In France, artichokes are often served raw for breakfast, on a plate with a little heap of chopped raw onion and another heap of chopped capers or parsley. The Frenchman mixes a little oil or vinegar on his plate, adding the onion, etc., according to his taste. The leaves are pulled off one by one, the white stalk part dipped in this dressing and then eaten by being drawn through the teeth. The artichoke bottom is reserved for the finish as a bonne bouche, something like a schoolboy who would eat all the pastry round a jam tart, leaving the center for the finale. Beetroot salad. In boiling beetroots, be careful not to break them, or else they will bleed and lose their color. When the beetroot is boiled and cold, peel it and cut it into thin slices. It can be dressed with oil and vinegar, or vinegar only, adding pepper and salt. Some persons dress beetroot with salad dressing in which cream is used instead of oil, but never use cream and oil. To mix cream and oil is like mixing bacon with butter. Cucumber salad. Peel a cucumber and cut it into slices as thin as possible. We might almost add thinner if possible. Mix it with a little salt and let it stand, tossing the cucumber about every now and then. By this means you extract all the water from the cucumber. Drain off this water and add plenty of oil to the cucumber, and then mix it so that every slice comes in contact with the oil. Now add a little pepper and a very little vinegar and mix it thoroughly. If you add vinegar to cucumber before the oil, some of the slices will taste like sour pickle, as the vinegar soaks into the cucumber. Cucumber should be always served very cold and is best placed in an ice chest for an hour before serving. Some people put a piece of ice on the top of the cucumber. French bean salad. Cold boiled French beans make a very nice salad. A little chopped parsley should be mixed with them, and the salad bowl can be rubbed with a bead of garlic. Some people soak the beans in vinegar first and then add oil. This would suit a German palate. A better plan is to add the oil first with pepper and salt, mix all well together, and then add the vinegar. Bean salad. Cold boiled broad beans make a very nice salad. Rub off the skin so that only the green part is put in the salad bowl. Rub the bowl with garlic, add a little chopped parsley, then oil, pepper and salt. Mix well and add vinegar last of all. Haricot bean salad. This can be made from cold-boiled dried white haricot beans. Add plenty of chopped parsley, rub the bowl with garlic, mix oil, pepper and salt first, vinegar afterwards. The nicest haricot bean salad is made from the fresh green beans met with abroad. They can be obtained in this country in tins, and a delicious salad can be had at a moment's notice by opening a tin, straining off the liquor, and drying the little green beans, which are very soft and tender, and dressing them with oil and vinegar in the ordinary way. A little chopped parsley or garlic flavoring by rubbing the bowl can be added or not, according to taste. Celery and beetroot salad. A mixture of celery and beetroot makes a very nice winter salad. The beetroot, of course, is boiled, and the celery generally sliced up thin in a raw state. It is a great improvement to boil the celery till it is nearly tender. By this means you improve the salad, and the celery assists in making vegetarian stock. Watercress. Watercress is sometimes mixed with other salad, but when eaten alone requires no dressing, but only a little salt. Dandelion leaf salad. Considering that the root of the dandelion is so largely used in medicine for making taraxacum, it is to be regretted that the leaves of the plant are not utilized in this country as they are abroad for making salad. These leaves can be obtained in London at a few shops in the French colony of Soho. The leaves are washed, dried, placed in a salad bowl, and dressed with oil and vinegar in the ordinary way. Cauliflower salad. The remains of a cold-boiled cauliflower makes a very good salad if only the white part be used. It can be mixed with the remains of cold potatoes. Some chopped blanched parsley should be sprinkled over the top. and it can be dressed with oil and vinegar in the ordinary way, or it can be served up with a sauce made from oiled butter, similar to that described for dressing cold asparagus. Mustard and cress. This is somewhat similar to watercress. When served alone, it is generally dipped in salt and eaten with bread and butter, but it is very useful to mix with other kinds of salad. Hop salad. In Germany, a very nice salad is made from young hops, which are grown very extensively in America and Germany, as English brewers are well aware. The hops are picked when quite young before they get leafy. They are then boiled till nearly tender. They can be dressed in the English fashion with oil and vinegar, or in the German fashion with vinegar and sugar. Onion salad. Few people are aware of what an excellent salad can be made from the remains of cold boiled Spanish onions. Spanish onions can generally be bought at a penny a pound. They are mild in flavor, very wholesome, and contain a great deal of nourishment. Take a couple of cold boiled Spanish onions, pull them into leaves after they are quite dry, and dress them with a very little oil and vinegar. Italian salad. This is a very delicious salad met with in Italy. It consists of a great variety of boiled vegetables, which are placed in a mold and served in aspic jelly. This latter, however, is not allowed in vegetarian cookery. A very good imitation, however, can be made as follows. First, take as many cold vegetables as you can, consisting of new potatoes, sliced and cut up with a cutter into pretty-looking shapes. You can also take green peas, asparagus tops, cold-boiled cauliflower, French beans, beetroot, etc. These vegetables should be dressed with a little oil, tarragon vinegar, pepper and salt, and can be placed in a mold or plain round basin. This basin can now be filled up with a little water, thickened with corn flour, hot. When it is cold, it can be turned out and sent to table in the shape of a mold. Melon salad. Melon is sometimes served abroad as a salad, and a slice of melon is often sent to table at the commencement of dinner to be eaten with a little salt, cayenne pepper, and sometimes oil and vinegar. Salads, sweet. Apples, oranges, currants, pineapple, and bananas are sometimes served as salads with syrup and sugar. They make a very nice mixture, or can be served separately. When preserved pineapples in tins are used for the purpose, the syrup in the tin should be used for dressing the salad. Whole ripe strawberries are a great improvement, as also a wineglass full of brandy and a lump of ice. Sandwiches. There is an art in cutting sandwiches, a fact which persons in the habit of frequenting railway restaurants will hardly realize. A tinned loaf is best for the purpose if we wish to avoid waste. The great thing is to have the two slices of bread to fit together neatly, and there is no occasion to cut off the crust when made from a well-rasped tin loaf. First cut off the crust from the top of the loaf, which, of course, must be used for some other purpose. The best use for this top slice is to toast it lightly on the crummy side and cut it up into little pieces to be served with soup. Next take the loaf, cut off one thin slice evenly, and let it fall on its back on the board you are using. Now butter very slightly the upper surface. Next butter the top of the loaf, cut another thin slice, and, of course, these two pieces of bread will be perfectly level, and if the two buttered sides be placed together, will fit round the edge exactly. Tomato sandwiches. Cut some very ripe red tomatoes into thin slices and cut them parallel with the core, as otherwise you will get them in rings from which the core will drop out. Sprinkle some thin slices of bread and butter with mustard and cress. Dip the slices of tomato into a dressing made with a little oil, pepper, and salt well mixed up. Put these between the bread and butter and cut them into squares or triangles with a very sharp knife. These sandwiches are very cool and refreshing, and make a most agreeable supper after a hot and crowded ballroom. If you wish to have them look pretty, pile them up in the center of a silver dish and place a few ripe red tomatoes round the base on some bright green parsley. Place the dish in an ice chest for an hour before it is eaten. Mustard and cress sandwiches. Place well-washed and dried mustard and cress between two slices of bread and butter, and trim the edges. It is best to pepper and salt the bread and butter first. Pile up the sandwiches on a silver dish and sprinkle some loose mustard and cress round the base. Egg sandwiches. Cut some hard-boiled eggs into very thin slices. Season them with pepper and salt and place them between 2 slices of thin bread and butter. Cut the sandwiches into triangles or squares. Pile them up in a silver dish. Place plenty of fresh green parsley around the base of the dish, and place some hard-boiled eggs cut in halves on the parsley, which will show what the sandwiches are composed of. Indian sandwiches. These are exactly similar to the above, with the addition that the slices of hard-boiled eggs are seasoned with a little curry powder. If hard-boiled eggs in halves are placed round the base of the dish, each half egg should be sprinkled with curry powder in order to show what the sandwiches are. Mushroom sandwiches. Take a pint of fresh button mushrooms, peel them, and throw them into lemon juice and water in order to preserve their color. Or else take the contents of a tin of mushrooms, chop them up, and stew them in a frying pan very gently with a little butter, pepper, salt, a pinch of thyme, and the juice of a whole lemon to every pint of mushrooms. When tender, rub the mixture through a wide sieve while the butter is warm and the mixture moist. Add a teaspoonful of finely chopped blanched parsley. Spread this mixture while still warm on a thin slice of bread and cover it over with another thin slice of bread and press the 2 slices of bread together. When the mixture gets quite cold, the butter will set and the sandwiches get quite firm. The bread need not be buttered, as the mixture contains butter enough. Pile these sandwiches up on a silver dish, surround the dish with plenty of fresh parsley, and place a few fresh mushrooms whole, stalk, and all round them, as if they are growing out of the parsley. Cheese sandwiches. Oil a little butter, add some pepper and salt and a spoonful of made mustard and a pinch of cayenne pepper. When this mixture is nearly cold, use it for buttering some thin slices of bread, and before it is quite cold, sprinkle them with some grated Parmesan cheese. Put the 2 slices of bread together and press them, and when cold, cut them into squares or triangles. Place plenty of fresh green parsley round the dish, and if you are using hard-boiled eggs for other purposes, take the end of the white of egg, which has a little cup in it not much bigger than the top of the finger, and put a little heap of Parmesan cheese in each cup. Place a few of these round the base of the dish, on the parsley, in order to show what the sandwiches are composed of. Cream cheese sandwiches. Chop up some of the white part of a head of celery very fine and pound it in a mortar with a little butter. Season it with some salt. Use this mixture and butter some thin slices of bread. Place a thin slice of cream cheese between these slices. Cut the sandwiches into squares or triangles with a very sharp knife and pile the sandwiches up on a silver dish. Surround the dish with parsley and place a few slices of cream cheese cut round the size of a halfpenny round the base. Stick a little piece of the yellowish-white leaves of the heart of celery in each piece. End of section 14. Recording by Sam W. from www.thisvoiceofmine.com.
Section 15 of Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Amelia Chesley. Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery by Arthur Gay Payne. Chapter 6, Part 1, Savory Dishes, Mushrooms. In many parts of the country mushrooms grow so plentifully that their cost may be considered almost nothing. On the other hand, if they have to be bought fresh, at certain seasons of the year they are very expensive, while tinned mushrooms, which can always be depended upon, cannot be regarded in any other light than that of a luxury. When mushrooms can be gathered in the fields like blackberries, they are a great boon to vegetarians. Of course, great care must be taken that only genuine mushrooms are picked, as there have been some terrible instances of poisoning from fungi being gathered by mistake, as many Cockney tourists know to their cost. As a rule, in England all mushrooms bought in markets can be depended upon. In France, where mushrooms are very plentiful, an inspector is appointed in every market, and no mushrooms are allowed to be sold unless they have first received his sanction. This is a wise precaution in the right direction. One important word of warning before leaving the subject. Mushrooms should be eaten freshly gathered, and if allowed to get stale, those which were perfectly wholesome when fresh picked become absolutely poisonous. The symptoms are somewhat similar to narcotic poisoning. This particularly applies to the larger and coarser kind that give out black juice. Mushrooms, plain, grilled. The larger kind of mushrooms are best for the purpose. The flat mushrooms should be washed, dried, and peeled. They are then cooked slowly over a clear fire, and a small wire gridiron, like those sold at a penny or 2d. each, is better adapted for the purpose than the ordinary gridiron used for grilling steak. The gridiron should be kept high above the fire. The mushrooms should be dipped in oil or oiled butter, and care should be taken that they do not stick to the bars. They should be served very hot, with pepper and salt and a squeeze of lemon juice. Mushrooms, fried. When mushrooms are very small, they are more easily fried than grilled. They should be washed, dried, and peeled, placed in the frying pan with a little butter, pepper, and salt, and cooked until tender. They are very nice served on toast, and the butter in which they are cooked can be poured on the toast first, and the mushrooms arranged on the top afterwards. A squeeze of lemon juice is an improvement. Mushrooms au gratin. This is a very delicious dish, and it is often served as an entrée at first-class dinners. They are made from what are known as cup mushrooms. It is best to pick mushrooms as far as possible the same size, the cup being about 2 inches in diameter. Peel the mushrooms very carefully without breaking them. Cut out the stalks close down with a spoon, scoop out the inside of the cup so as to make it hollow. Now peel the stalks and chop them up with all the scooped part of the mushroom, with, supposing we are making 10 cups, a piece of onion as big as the top of the thumb down to the first joint. To this add a brimming teaspoonful of chopped parsley, or even a little more, a saltspoonful of dried thyme, or half this quantity of fresh thyme. Fry all of this in a frying pan in a little butter. The aroma is delicious. Then add sufficient dried breadcrumbs that have been rubbed through a wire sieve to make the whole into a moist paste. Fill each of the cups with this mixture so that the top is as convex as the cup of the mushroom, having first seasoned the mixture with a little pepper, salt, and lemon juice. Shake some fine bread raspings over the top, so as to make them a nice golden brown colour. Pour a little drop of oil into a baking tin, place the mushrooms in it, and bake them gently in an oven till the cup part of the mushroom becomes soft and tender, but take care they do not cook till they break. Now take them out carefully with an egg slice, and place them on a dish. A silver dish is best for the purpose, and place some nice crisp fried parsley around the edge. Mushrooms à la Bordelaise. This, as the name implies, is a French recipe. It consists of ordinary grilled mushrooms served in a sauce composed of oil or oiled butter, chopped up with parsley and garlic, thickened with the yolk of eggs. Mushrooms à la Provençale. This is an Italian recipe. You must first wash, peel, and dry the mushrooms, and then soak them for some time in what is called a marinade, which is another word for pickle, of oil mixed with chopped garlic, pepper, and salt. They are then stewed in oil with plenty of chopped parsley over rather a brisk fire. Squeeze a little lemon juice over them, and serve them in a dish surrounded with a little fried or toasted bread. Mushroom forcemeat. The mushrooms, after being cleaned, should be chopped up and fried in a little butter. Lemon juice should be added before they are chopped, in order to preserve their colour. 1 or 2 hard-boiled yolks of eggs can be added to the mixture, and the whole rubbed through a wire sieve while hot. When the mixture is hot, it should be moist, but of course when it gets cold, owing to the butter, it will be hard. This mushroom forcemeat can be used for a variety of purposes. Mushroom pie. Wash, dry, and peel some mushrooms, and cut them into slices with an equal quantity of cut up potatoes. Bake these in a pie, having first moistened the potatoes and mushrooms in a little butter. Add pepper and salt and a small pinch of thyme. Cover them with a little water, and put some paste over the dish in the ordinary way. It is a great improvement after the pie is baked to pour in some essence of mushrooms made from stewing the stalks and peelings in a little water. A single onion should be put in with them. Mushroom pie, cold. Prepare the mushrooms, potatoes, and essence of mushroom as directed above, adding a little chopped parsley. Bake all these in the dish before you cover with paste, add also an extra seasoning of pepper. When the mushrooms and potatoes are perfectly tender, strain off all the juice or gravy, and thicken it with corn flour. Put this back in the pie dish and mix all well together, and pile it up in the middle of the dish so that the centre is raised above the edge. Let this get quite cold, then cover it with puff paste, and as soon as the pastry is done, take it out of the oven and let the pie get cold. This can now be cut in slices. Mushroom pudding. Make a mixture of mushrooms, potatoes, etc., exactly similar to that for making a pie. Place this in a basin with only sufficient water to moisten the ingredients. Cover the basin with breadcrumbs soaked in milk, and steam the basin in the ordinary way. Tomatoes, grilled. What is necessary is a clear fire and a gridiron on which the bars are not too far apart. The disputed point is, should the tomatoes be grilled whole or cut in half? This may be considered a matter of taste, but personally we prefer them grilled whole. Moisten the tomato in a little oil or oiled butter, and grill them carefully, as they are apt to break. Grilled tomatoes are very nice with plain boiled macaroni, or can be served up on boiled rice. Tomatoes, baked. Place the tomatoes in a tin with a little butter, and occasionally baste them with the butter. When they are tender, they can be served either plain or with boiled macaroni or rice. The butter and juice in the tin should be poured over them. Tomatoes, fried. Place the tomatoes in a frying pan with a little butter and fry them until they are tender. Pour the contents of the frying pan over them, serve plain or with macaroni or rice. Tomatoes, stewed. Take half a dozen good-sized tomatoes and chop up very finely one onion about the same size as the tomatoes. Moisten the bottom of a stew pan with a little butter, and sprinkle the chopped onion over the tomatoes. Add a dessertspoonful of water. Place the lid on the stew pan, which ought to fit tightly. It is best to put a weight on the lid of the stew pan, such as a flat iron. Place the stew pan on the fire and let them steam until they are tender. They are cooked this way in Spain and Portugal, and very often chopped garlic is used instead of onion. Tomatoes au gratin. Take a dozen ripe tomatoes, cut off the stalks, and squeeze out thyme juice and pips. Next, take a few mushrooms and make a mixture exactly similar to that which was used to fill the inside of mushrooms au gratin. Fill each tomato with some of this mixture so that it assumes its original shape and tight skin. The top or hole where the stalk was cut out will probably be about the size of a shilling or a halfpenny. Shake some bright coloured bread raspings over this spot without letting them fall on the red tomato. In order to do this, cut a round hole the right size in a stiff piece of paper. Place the tomatoes in a stew pan or a baking dish in the oven. Moisten with a little oil. The oil should be about the 1/8 of an inch deep. Stew or bake the tomatoes till they are tender, and then take them out carefully with an egg slice, and serve them surrounded with fried parsley. If placed in a silver dish, this has a very pretty appearance. Tomato pie. Slice up an equal number of ripe tomatoes and potatoes. Place them in a pie dish with enough oiled butter to moisten them. Add a brimming teaspoonful of chopped parsley, a pinch of thyme, pepper, and salt, and if possible a few peeled mushrooms, which will be found to be a very great improvement. Cover the pie with paste, and bake in the oven. Tomato pie, another way. Proceed as in making an ordinary potato pie. Add a small bottle of tomato conserve, cover with paste, and bake in the ordinary way. Potato pie. Peel and slice up some potatoes as thin as possible. At the same time slice up some onions. If Spanish onions are used, allow equal quantities of potatoes and onions, but if ordinary onions are used, allow only half this quantity. Place a layer of sliced onion and sliced potato alternately. Add some pepper, salt, and sufficient butter to moisten the potato and onion before any water is added. Pour in some water and add a teaspoonful of chopped parsley. Cover the pie with paste and bake in the ordinary way. Potato pie, another way. Butter a shallow pie dish rather thickly. Line the edges with a good crust, and then fill the pie with mashed potatoes seasoned with pepper, salt, and grated nutmeg. Lay over them some small lumps of butter, hard boiled eggs, blanched almonds, sliced dates, sliced lemon, and candied peel. Cover the dish with pastry and bake the pie in a well-heated oven for half an hour or more, according to the size of the pie. Pumpkin pie. Peel a ripe pumpkin and chip off the rind or skin. Halve it and take out the seed and fluffy part in the centre, which throw away. Cut the pumpkin into small thin slices. Fill a pie dish therewith. Add to it half a teaspoonful of allspice and a tablespoonful of sugar, with a small quantity of water. Cover with a nice light paste and bake in the ordinary way. Pumpkin pie is greatly improved by being eaten with Devonshire cream and sugar. An equal quantity of apples with the pumpkin will make a still more delicious pie. Pumpkin pudding. Take a large pumpkin, pare it and remove the seeds. Cut half of it into thin slices and boil these gently in water until they are quite soft. Then rub them through a fine sieve with the back of a wooden spoon. Measure the pulp, and with each pint put 4 ounces of butter and a large nutmeg grated. Stir the mixture briskly for a minute or two, then add the third of a pint of hot milk and 4 well-beaten eggs. Pour the pudding into a buttered dish and bake in a moderate oven for about an hour. Sugar may be added to taste. Potato cheesecake. See cheesecakes. Cheese with fried bread. Take some stale bread and cut it into strips about 3 inches long and 1 wide and 1 inch thick. Fry the bread in some butter or oil till it is a nice bright golden colour. Spread a layer of made mustard over the strips of fried bread, and then cover them with grated Parmesan cheese. Pile them up on a dish and place them in the oven. As soon as the cheese begins to melt, serve them very hot. Cheese savoury. Take equal quantities of grated Parmesan cheese, butter, and flour. Add a little salt and cayenne pepper. Make these into a paste with some water. Roll out the paste thin till it is about 1/4 inch thick. Cut it into strips and bake them in the oven till they are a nice brown, and serve hot. Cheese soufflé. See omelettes. Cheese pudding. Mix half a pound of grated Parmesan cheese with 4 eggs, well beaten up. Mix in also 2 ounces of butter, which should be first beaten to a cream. Add half a pint of milk, and pour the mixture into a well-buttered pie dish. Sprinkle some grated Parmesan cheese over the top, and bake in the oven for about half an hour. The pudding will be lighter if 2 of the whites of eggs are beaten to a stiff froth. The edge of the pie dish can be lined with puff paste. Cheese ramekins. Put half a pound of grated Parmesan cheese in a stewpan with 1/4 pound of butter and 1/4 pint of water. Add a little pepper and salt, and as much flour as will make the whole into a thick paste. Mix up with the paste as many well beaten up eggs as will make the paste not too liquid to be moulded into a shape. The eggs should be beaten till they froth. Now, with a tablespoon, mould this mixture into shapes like a meringue or egg. Place these on a buttered tin and bake them till they are a nice brown colour. Cheese stewed. When the remains of cheese have got very dry, it is a good plan to use it up in the shape of stewed cheese. Break up the cheese and put it in a small stewpan with about 1/4 of its weight of butter. Add a little milk, and let the cheese stew gently till it is dissolved. At the finish, and when you have removed it from the fire, add a well beaten up egg. This can be served on toast, or it can be poured onto a dish and pieces of toasted bread stuck in it. Cheese straws. Mix equal quantities of grated Parmesan cheese, grated breadcrumbs that have been rubbed through a wire sieve, butter, and flour. Add a little cayenne and grated nutmeg. Make it into a thick paste, roll it out very thin, cut it into strips, and bake for a few minutes in a fierce oven. Cheese toasted. This is best done in a Dutch oven, so that when one side is toasted you can turn the oven and toast the back. As soon as the cheese begins to melt, it is done. As it gets cold very quickly, and when cold gets hard, it is best served on hot water plates. Cheese devilled. Chop up some hot pickles, add some cayenne pepper and mustard. Melt some cheese in a stewpan with a little butter, mix in the pickles, and serve on toast. Welsh rarebit. Toast a large slice of bread. In the meantime, melt some cheese in the saucepan with a little butter. When the cheese is melted, it will be found that a good deal of oiled butter floats on the top. Pour this over the dry toast first, and then pour the melted cheese afterwards. Some persons add a teaspoonful of Worcestershire sauce to the cheese, and others a tablespoonful of good old Burton ale over the top. Aioli. This dish is almost peculiar to the south of France. Soak some crusts of bread in water, squeeze them dry, and add 2 cloves of garlic chopped fine, 6 blanched almonds, also chopped very fine, and a yolk of an egg. Mix up the whole into a smooth paste with a little oil. Pumpkin à la Parmesan. Cut a large pumpkin into square pieces and boil them for about 1/4 hour in salt and water, and take them out, drain them, and put them in a stewpan with a little butter, salt, and grated nutmeg. Fry them, sprinkle them with a little Parmesan cheese, and bake them for a short time in the oven till the cheese begins to melt, and then serve. This is an Italian recipe. Zucchetti farcis. Take some very small gourds or pumpkins, boil them for about 1/4 hour in salt and water, and then fill them with a forcemeat made as follows: take some crumbs of bread and soak it in milk. Squeeze it and add the yolks of 2 hard-boiled eggs and 2 raw yolks. Chop up very finely 1/2 blanched almonds and a couple of cloves. Add 2 ounces of grated Parmesan cheese, and a little salt and grated nutmeg. Stew these gourds in butter and serve them with white sauce. Stuffed onions, Italian fashion. Parboil some large onions, stamp out the core after they have been allowed to get quite cold in a little water. Fill the inside with forcemeat similar to the above. Fry them, squeeze the juice of a lemon over them, with a little pepper. Polenta. Polenta is made from ground Indian corn, and is seen in Italian shop windows in the form of a yellow powder. It is made into a paste with boiling water, sprinkled with Parmesan cheese, and baked in the oven. Pierogi sernikis. This dish is met with in Poland, and is made by mixing up 2 pounds of cream cheese, 3/4 pound of fine breadcrumbs that have been rubbed through a wire sieve, 6 eggs well beaten up, add a little cream or milk, 4 ounces of washed grocer's currants, and 1 ounce of sugar, half a grated nutmeg. And when the whole is thoroughly mixed, add as much flour as is necessary to make the whole into a paste that can be rolled into balls. These balls should not be much bigger than a walnut. Flour them, and then flatten them into little cakes, and fry them a nice brown in some butter. Of course, a smaller quantity can be made by using these ingredients in proportion. Naleśnikis, or Polish pancakes. Take 8 eggs and beat them up very thoroughly with about 1 1/2 pints of milk, or still better, cream, 2 ounces of butter that has been oiled, half a grated nutmeg, and about a dozen lumps of sugar that have been rubbed on the outside of a lemon. Mix in sufficient flour, about 3/4 pound will be required, to make the whole into a very smooth batter. Melt a little butter in a frying pan, pour it all over the pan, and when it frizzles, pour in some of the batter, and sprinkle over a few currants. When the pancake is fried, shake some powdered sugar over it, roll it up like an ordinary pancake, and serve hot. End of section 15.
Section 16 of Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery by Arthur Gay Payne. Chapter 6. Savory Dishes. Fritters. Batter for savory fritters. Put 6 ounces of flour into a basin with a pinch of salt, the yolk of 1 egg, and 1/4 pint of warm water. Work this round and round with a wooden spoon till it is perfectly smooth and looks like thick cream. About half an hour before the batter is wanted for use, whip the white of 1 egg to a stiff froth and mix it lightly in. Mushroom fritters. Make some mushroom forcemeat. Let it get quite cold on a dish about 1/4 inch thick. Cut out some small rounds about the size of a penny piece. They fry better if slightly oval. Have ready some thick batter. See batter. Have also ready in a saucepan some boiling oil, which should be heated to about 350 degrees. Place a frying basket in the saucepan. Flour the rounds of mushroom forcemeat so as to make them perfectly dry on the outside. Dip these pieces into the batter and throw them into the boiling oil. The great heat of the oil will set the batter before the mushroom forcemeat has time to melt. Directly the batter is a nice light brown color, lift them out of the boiling oil with the frying basket and throw them onto a cloth to drain. Break off the outside pieces of batter and serve the fritters on a neatly folded napkin on a dish surrounded by fried parsley. The beauty of these fritters is that when they are eaten the inside is moist, owing, of course, to the heat having melted the forcemeat. Tomato fritters. Make some mushroom forcemeat and spread it out as thin as possible. Take some ripe tomatoes, cut them in slices, dip the slice in vinegar, drain it and pepper it, and then wrap this thin slice of tomato in a layer of mushroom forcemeat. Bring the edges together, flour it, dip it into batter, see batter, and throw it into boiling oil as in making mushroom fritters. See mushroom fritters. Imitation game fritters. Make some mushroom forcemeat as directed under the heading Mushroom Forcemeat, with the addition of, when you fry the mushrooms, chop up and fry with them 2 heads of garlic, and add a saltspoonful of aromatic flavoring herbs. These are sold in bottles by all grocers under the name of herbaceous mixture. Then proceed exactly as if you were making mushroom fritters. See mushroom fritters. Hominy fritters. These are made from remains of cold boiled hominy, cut in thin slices, which must be dipped in batter and fried in boiling oil. Cheese fritters. Pound some dry cheese, or take about 3 ounces of Parmesan cheese and mix it with a few breadcrumbs, a piece of butter, a pinch of cayenne pepper, and the yolk of an egg, till the whole becomes a thick paste. Roll the mixture into very small balls, flatten them, flour them, dip them into batter, and throw them into boiling oil in the ordinary way. Put them in the oven for 5 minutes before serving them. Sage and onion fritters. Make some ordinary sage and onion stuffing, allowing 1 fresh sage leaf or 2 dried to each parboiled onion. Add pepper and salt and dried breadcrumbs. Now moisten the whole with clarified butter till the mixture becomes a moist pulp. When it begins to get cold and sets, roll it into small balls, the size of a very small walnut. Flatten these and let them get quite cold, then flour them, dip them into batter, and throw them into boiling oil. Remove them with the frying basket and serve with fried parsley. Spinach fritters. Make a little thick puree of spinach. Add a pinch of savory herbs containing marjoram. Mix in a little clarified butter and 1 or 2 lumps of sugar rubbed on the outside of a lemon, as well as a little grated nutmeg. Roll the mixture into very small ball, or else they will break. Flatten them, flour them, dip them into batter, and throw them into boiling oil, and serve immediately. Fritters sweet. In making sweet fritters, the same kind of batter will do as we used for making savory fritters, though many cooks add a little powdered sugar. The same principles hold good. The oil must be heated to a temperature of 350 degrees, and a frying basket must be used. Instead of flouring the substances employed to make them dry before being dipped into the batter, which is an essential point in making fritters, we must use finely powdered sugar, and it will be found a saving of both time and trouble to buy pounded sugar for the purpose. It is sold by grocers under the name of castor sugar. We cannot make this at home in a pestle and mortar to the same degree of fineness any more than we could grind our own flour. We cannot compete with machinery. Apple fritters. Peel some apples, cut them in slices across the core, and stamp out the core. It is customary, where wine, etc., is not objected to soak these rings of apples for several hours in a mixture of brandy, grated lemon or orange peel, and sugar, or better still, to rub some lumps of sugar on the outside of a lemon or orange and dissolve this in the brandy. Of course brandy is not necessary, but the custom is worth mentioning. The rings of apple can be soaked for some time in syrup flavored this way. They must then be made dry by being dipped in powdered sugar, then dipped into batter and thrown, one at a time, into a saucepan containing smoking hot oil, in which a wire frying basket has been placed. Directly the fritters are a nice brown, take them out, break off the rough pieces, shake some finely powdered sugar over them, Pile them up on a dish and serve. Apricot fritters. These can be made from fresh apricots or tinned ones, not too ripe. If they break they are not fitted. When made from fresh apricots they should be peeled, cut in halves, the round end removed, dipped in powdered sugar, then dipped in batter, thrown into boiling oil, and finished like apple fritters. Some persons soak the apricots in brandy. Banana fritters. Banana fritters can be made from the bananas as sold in this country, and it is a mistake to think that when they are black outside they are bad. When in this state they are sometimes sold as cheap as 6 a penny. Peel the bananas, cut them into slices half an inch thick, dip them in finely powdered sugar and then into batter, and finish as directed in apple fritters. Some persons soak the slices of banana in maraschino. Custard fritters. Take half a pint of cream in which some cinnamon and lemon have been boiled, add to this 5 yolks of eggs, a little flour, and about 3 ounces of sugar. Put this into a pie dish, well buttered, and steam it till the custard becomes quite set. Then let it get cold, and cut it into slices about half an inch thick and an inch and a half long. Sprinkle each piece with a little powdered cinnamon, and make it quite dry with some powdered sugar. Then dip each piece into batter, throw them one by one into boiling oil, and finish as directed for apple fritters. Almond fritters, chocolate fritters, coffee fritters, vanilla fritters, etc. These fritters are made exactly in the same way as custard fritters, only substituting powdered chocolate, pounded almonds, essence of coffee, or essence of vanilla for the powdered cinnamon. Frangipani fritters. Make a frangipani cream by mixing eggs with a little cold potato, butter, sugar, and powdered ratafias, the proportion being 1/4 pound of butter, 4 eggs, 6 ounces of sugar, 1 cold floury potato, and 1/4 pound of ratafias. Bake or steam this until it is set, and proceed as in custard fritters. Many persons add the flavoring of a little rum. Peach fritters. These are made exactly similar to apricot fritters, bearing in mind that if they are made from tinned peaches, only the firm pieces, and not pulpy ones, must be used for the purpose. Proceed exactly as directed for apricot fritters. If any liqueur is used, noyeau is best adapted for the purpose. Potato fritters. Mix up some floury potato with 1/4 pound of butter, a well beaten up egg, and 3 ounces of sugar, some of which has been rubbed on the outside of a lemon. The addition of a little cream is a great improvement. Roll the mixture into small balls and flour them. They are then fried just as they are, without being dipped into batter. Pineapple fritters. These can be made from fresh pineapples or tinned. They should be cut into slices like apple fritters if the pineapple is small, but if the pineapple is large they can be cut into strips 3 inches long and 1 wide and a ½ inch thick. These must be dipped in powdered sugar, then into batter, and finished as directed for apple fritters. If any liqueur is used, maraschino is best adapted to the purpose. Orange fritters. Only first-class oranges are adapted for this purpose. Thick-skinned and woolly oranges are no use. Peel a thin-skinned ripe orange, divide each orange into about 6 pieces, soak these in a syrup flavored with sugar, rubbed on the outside of an orange, and if liqueur is used, make the syrup with brandy. After they have soaked some time, remove any pips, dip each piece into batter, and proceed as directed for apple fritters. Cream fritters. Rub some lumps of sugar on the outside of an orange, pound them, and mix with a little cream. Take some small pieces of stale white cake, such as Madeira cake, or what the French call brioche. Soak these pieces of stale cake, which must be cut small and thin, or they will break, in the orange-flavored cream. Dry each piece in some finely powdered sugar, dip it into batter, and proceed as directed for making apple fritters. German fritters. Take some small stale pieces of cake and soak them in a little milk or cream, flavored with essence of vanilla and sweetened with a little sugar. Take them out and let them get a little dry on the outside, then dip them in a well beaten up egg, cover them with breadcrumbs, and fry a nice golden brown color. Rice and ginger fritters. Boil a small quantity of rice in milk and add some preserved ginger chopped small, some sugar, and 1 or more eggs, sufficient to set the mixture when baked in a pie dish. Bake till set, then cut into slices about 2 inches long, an inch wide, and half an inch thick. Dry these pieces with powdered sugar, dip into batter, and finish as directed for making apple fritters. Rice fritters. A variety of fritters could be made from a small baked rice pudding, flavored with various kinds of essences, spices, orange marmalade, peach marmalade, fresh lime marmalade, apricot jam, etc., proceeding exactly as described above. End of section 16. Section 17 of Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery by Arthur Gay Payne. Chapter 7. Vegetables. Substantial Vegetables. Part 1. Vegetables may be roughly divided into two classes, those that may be called substantial and which are adapted to form a meal in themselves, and those of a lighter kind, which cannot be said to make a sufficient repast unless eaten with bread. Potatoes were first introduced into this country about 400 years ago, tobacco being introduced about the same period, and we cannot disguise the fact that there are many who regard the latter as the greater blessing of the two. If Sir Henry Thompson is right in stating that tobacco is the great ally of temperance, there may be some ground for this opinion. Potatoes form an important article of food for the body, while, whatever effect tobacco may have upon the thinking powers of mankind, it is almost the only product of the vegetable kingdom that is absolutely uneatable, even when placed within reach of those in the last stage of starvation. In some parts, especially in Ireland, potatoes form almost the only food of the population, just as rice does in hotter climates, and when the crop fails, famine ensues. When potatoes form the only kind of food, a very large quantity has to be eaten by a hard-working man in order for him to receive sufficient nourishment to keep his body healthy, the amount required being not less than 10 pounds per day. If, on the other hand, a certain amount of fat or oil of some kind be mixed with them, a far less quantity will suffice. Hence we find in Ireland that wherever it is possible, either some kind of oily fish, such as herring, is taken with them, or, which is much more to the point with vegetarians, a certain quantity of fat is obtained in the shape of milk. It must also be remembered that 4 pounds of raw potatoes contain only 1 pound of solid food, the remaining 3 pounds being water. It is important, for those who first commence a vegetarian diet, to remember that vegetables, like peas, haricot beans, and lentils, are far superior to potatoes so far as nourishment is concerned, for many are apt to jump to the conclusion that potatoes are the very best substitute for bread and milk. So, too, is oatmeal. A Scotchman requires a far less quantity of oatmeal to sustain life than an Irishman does potatoes. Hence it is a very important point to remember that if we depend upon potatoes to any great extent for our daily food, we should cook them in such a manner as to entail as little waste as possible. We will now try and explain, as briefly as possible, the best method of serving. Potatoes, plain boiled. The best method of having potatoes, if we wish to study economy, is to boil them in their jackets, as it is generally admitted that the most nourishing part is that which lies nearest to the skin. There are many houses in the country where an inexperienced cook will peel, say, 4 pounds of potatoes, and throw the peel into the pig tub, where the pig gets a better meal than the family. When potatoes are boiled in their skins, they should be thoroughly washed and scrubbed with a hard brush. Old potatoes should be put into cold water, and when the water boils the time should a good deal depend upon the size of the potatoes. When the potatoes are large, the chief principle to be borne in mind is, do not let them boil too quickly or cook too quickly. We must avoid having the outside pulpy while the inside is hard. The water, which should be slightly salted, should more than cover them, and, if the potatoes are very large, Directly the water comes to the boil, it is a good plan to throw in a little cold water to take it off the boil. It is quite impossible to lay down any exact law in regard to boiling potatoes. We cannot do more than give general principles which can only be carried out by cooks who possess a little common sense. Small new potatoes are an extreme in one direction. They should be thrown into boiling water and are generally cooked in about 10 minutes or a quarter of an hour. Large old potatoes should be put into cold water, and as we have stated, the water should not be allowed to boil too soon, and it will take very often an hour to boil them properly. Between these two extremes there is a gradually ascending scale, which must be left to the judgment of the cook. It is as impossible to lay down any hard and fast line with regard to time in boiling potatoes as it would be to say at what exact point in the thermometer between freezing and 80° in the shade a man should put on his top coat. If we may be allowed the expression, old new potatoes should be thrown into neither boiling water nor cold water, but lukewarm water. Again, in boiling potatoes, especially in the case of old ones, some little allowance must be made for the time of year. In winter they require longer time, and we may here mention the fact that it is very important that potatoes, after they are dug, should not be left out of doors and exposed to a hard frost, as in this case a chemical change takes place in which the starch is converted into sugar. When potatoes are boiled in their jackets sufficiently, which fact is generally tested by sticking a steel fork into them, they should be strained off and allowed to get dry for a few minutes in the saucepan, which should be removed from the fire, as at times the potatoes are apt to stick and burn. When large potatoes are peeled before they are boiled, we should endeavor to send them to table floury, and this is often said to be the test of a really good cook. After the water has been strained off from the potatoes, a dry cloth should be placed under the lid of the saucepan, and the lid should only be placed half on, i.e., it should not be fitted down tight. It is also as well to give the saucepan now and then a shake, but do not overdo the shaking and break them. About 5 or 10 minutes is generally sufficient. Potatoes steamed. Potatoes can be steamed in their jackets, and it is a more economical method than peeling. It should be remembered, however, that steam is hotter than boiling water. If plain water is underneath and boils furiously, and the steam is well shut in, they will cook very quickly. But if, as is generally the case, something else is in the saucepan under the steamer, boiling gently, this does not apply. We refer to the ordinary steamer met with in private houses, and not to the ones used in the large hotels and restaurants. Potatoes baked. When potatoes are baked in the oven in their jackets, the larger they are the better. The oven must not be too fierce, and ample time should be allowed. Baked potatoes require quite 2 hours. This only refers to those baked in their jackets. When potatoes are cut up and baked in a tin, they require some kind of fat, which of course in vegetarian cookery must be either oil or butter. Potatoes mashed. What may be termed high-class mashed potatoes are made by mashing up ordinary boiled potatoes with a little milk previously boiled, a little butter, and passing the whole through a wire sieve, when a little cream, butter, and salt is added. In private houses mashed potatoes are generally made from the remains of cold boiled potatoes, or when the cook in boiling the potatoes has made a failure. Still, of course, potatoes are boiled often expressly for the purpose of being mashed. This is often the case where old potatoes have to be cut into all sorts of shapes and sizes in order to get rid of the black spots. As soon as the potatoes are boiled, they are generally moistened in the saucepan with a little drop of milk. It is undoubtedly an improvement, and also entails very little extra trouble to boil the milk first. There is a difference in flavor, which is very marked, between milk that has been boiled and raw milk. Suppose you have coffee for breakfast. Add boiling milk to 1 cup and raw milk to another, and then see how great a difference there will be in the flavor of the two. A little butter should be added to mashed potatoes, but it is not really essential. Mashed potatoes can be served in the shape of a mould, that is, they can be shaped in a mould and then browned in the oven. If you serve mashed potatoes in an ordinary dish and pile them up in the shape of a dome, the dish will look much prettier if you score it round with a fork and then place the dish in a fairly fierce oven. The edges will brown, but be careful that they don't get burnt black. Potatoes fried. The best lesson, if you wish to fry potatoes nicely, is to look in at the window of a fried fish shop, where every condition is fulfilled that is likely to lead to perfection. The bath of oil is deep and smoking hot, and in sufficient quantity not to lose greatly in temperature on the introduction of the frying basket containing the potatoes. The potatoes must be cut up into small pieces, not much bigger in thickness than the little finger. These are plunged into the smoking hot oil, and as soon as they are slightly browned on the outside, they are done. They acquire a darker color after they are removed from the oil, and the inside will go on cooking for several minutes. It would be quite impossible to eat fried potatoes directly they are taken out of the fat, as they would burn the mouth terribly. It is best to throw the fried potatoes into a cloth for a few seconds. Potato chips. Potato chips are ordinary fried potatoes cut up when raw into little pieces about the size and thickness of a lucifer match. They, of course, will cook very quickly. They should be removed from the oil directly they begin to turn color. Potato ribbon. Potato ribbon is simply ordinary fried potatoes in which the raw potato is cut in the shape of a ribbon. You take a potato and peel it in the ordinary way. You then take this and with not too sharp a knife peel it like an apple, making the strip as long as you can, like children sometimes do when they throw the apple peel over their shoulders to see what letter it will make. You can go on peeling the potato round and round till there is none left. These ribbons are thrown into boiling oil and must be removed as soon as they begin to turn color. When piled up in a dish they look very pretty, and with a little pepper and salt and a squeeze of lemon juice make an excellent meal when eaten with bread. Potato sauté. This dish is more frequently met with abroad than in England, except in foreign restaurants. It is made by taking the remains of ordinary plain boiled potatoes that are not floury. These are cut up into small pieces about the size of the thumb, no particular shape being necessary. They are thrown into a frying pan with a little butter and fried gently till the edges begin to brown. They are served with chopped parsley and pepper and salt. The butter should be poured over the potatoes and supplies the fatty element which potato lacks. Potatoes à la maître d'hôtel. These are very similar to potato sauté, the difference being that they are not browned at the edges. Small kidney potatoes are best for the purpose. These must be boiled till tender and the potatoes then cut into slices. These must be warmed up with a spoonful or two of white sauce (see white sauce), to which is added some chopped parsley and a little lemon juice. A more common way is to boil the potatoes, slice them up while hot, and then toss them about in a vegetable dish lightly with a lump of what is called maître d'hôtel butter. This is simply a lump of plain cold butter mixed with chopped parsley, till it looks like a lump of cold parsley and butter. When tossed about, squeeze a little lemon juice over the whole and serve. Potatoes new. New potatoes should be washed and the skin, if necessary, rubbed off with the fingers. They should be thrown into boiling water, slightly salted, and as a rule require from 15 to 25 minutes to boil before they are done. During the last few minutes throw in 1 or 2 sprigs of fresh mint, drain them off and let them dry, and then place them in a vegetable dish with the mint and a little piece of butter, in which the potatoes should be boiled to give them a shiny appearance outside. New potatoes can also be served with a little white sauce, to which has been added a little chopped parsley. Potato balls. Mash some boiled potatoes with a little butter, pepper, salt, chopped parsley, chopped onion, or still better shallot, and add a few savory herbs. Mix up 1 or 2 or more well-beaten eggs according to the quantity of potato. Roll the mixture into balls, flour them, and fry them a nice brown color, and serve. Potato croquettes or cutlets. These are very similar to potato balls, only they should be smaller and more delicately flavored. The potatoes are boiled and mashed, and, if the croquettes are wished to be very good, 1 or 2 hard-boiled yolks of eggs should be mixed with them. The mixture is slightly flavored with shallot, savory herbs or thyme, chopped parsley, and a little nutmeg. 1 or 2 fresh, well beaten up eggs are now added, the mixture then rolled into small balls no bigger than a walnut. These are then dipped in well beaten up egg, and then bread crumbed. The balls are fried a nice golden brown color and served. Potato cutlets are exactly the same, only instead of shaping the mixture into a little ball, the ball is flattened into the shape of a small oval cutlet. These are then egged, bread crumbed, and fried, but before being sent to table a small piece of green parsley stalk is stuck in one end to represent the bone of the cutlet. These little cutlets, placed on an ornamental sheet of white paper at the bottom of the silver dish, look very pretty. A small heap of fried parsley should be placed in the center of the dish. Potato pie. See Savory Dishes, page 112. Potato cheesecake. See Cheesecakes, page 169. Potato salads. See Salads, page 101. Potato border of. A very pretty dish can be made by making a border of mashed potatoes, hollow in the center, in which can be placed various kinds of other vegetables, such as haricot beans, stewed peas, etc. The mashed potatoes should be mixed with 1 or 2 well beaten up eggs, and the outside of the border can be molded by hand to make it look smooth and neat. A piece of flexible tin, flat, will be found very useful, or even a piece of cardboard. If you wish to make the border ornamental, you can proceed exactly as directed under the heading Rice Borders, and if it is wished to make the dish particularly handsome, it can be painted outside before being placed in the oven, with the yolk of egg beaten up with a tiny drop of hot water. When this is done, the potato border has an appearance similar in color to the rich pastry generally seen outside a pie, or vol au vent. The inside of the potato border, after it has been scooped out, can be filled with plain boiled macaroni mixed with Parmesan cheese and ornamented with a little chopped parsley on the top and a few small baked red ripe tomatoes. Again, it can be filled with white haricot beans piled up in the shape of a dome, with some chopped parsley sprinkled over the top. There are perhaps few dishes in vegetarian cookery that can be made to look more elegant. Potato biscuits. M. Udi's recipe. Take 15 fresh eggs, break the yolks into one pan and the whites into another. Beat the yolks with a pound of sugar pounded very fine. Scrape the peel of a lemon with a lump of sugar, dry that and pound it fine also. Then throw it into the yolks and work the eggs and sugar till they are of a whitish color. Next whip the whites well and mix them with the yolks. Now sift half a pound of flour of potatoes through a silk sieve over the eggs and sugar. Have some paper cases ready, which lay on a plafond with some paper underneath. Fill the cases, but not too full. Glaze the contents with some rather coarse sugar, and bake the whole in an oven moderately heated. Potato bread. In making bread, a portion of mashed potato is sometimes added to the flour, and this addition improves the bread very much for some tastes. It also keeps it from getting dry quite so soon. At the same time, it is not so nutritious as ordinary homemade bread. Boil the required quantity of potatoes in their skins, drain and dry them, then peel and weigh them. Pound them with the rolling pin until they are quite free from lumps, and mix with them the flour in the proportion of 7 pounds of flour to 2½ pounds of potatoes. Add the yeast and knead in the ordinary way, but make up the bread with milk instead of water. When the dough is well risen, bake the bread in a gentle oven. Bake it a little longer than for ordinary bread, and when it seems done enough, let it stand a little while, with the oven door open, before taking it out. Unless these precautions are taken, the crust will be hard and brittle, while the inside is still moist and doughy. This recipe is from Cassell's Dictionary of Cookery. Potato cake. Take a dozen good-sized potatoes and bake them in the oven till done. Then peel and put them into a saucepan with a little salt and grated lemon peel. Set them upon the stove and put in a piece of fresh butter and stir the whole. Add a little cream and sugar, still continuing to stir them. Then let them cool a little, and add some orange flower water, 8 yolks of eggs, and 4 only of whites, whisked into froth. Heat up the whole together and mix it with the potato purée. Butter a mould and sprinkle it with breadcrumbs, pour in the paste, place the pan upon hot cinders with fire upon the lid, and let it remain for 3/4 of an hour, or it may be baked in an oven. Potato cheese. Potato cheeses are very highly esteemed in Germany. They can be made of various qualities, but care must be taken that they are not too rich and have not too much heat, or they will burst. Boil the potatoes till they are soft, but the skin must not be broken. The potatoes must be large and of the best quality. When boiled, carefully peel them and beat them to a smooth paste in a mortar with a wooden pestle. To make the commonest cheese, put 5 pounds of potato paste into a cheese tub with 1 pound of milk and rennet. Add a sufficient quantity of salt, together with caraways and cumin seed sufficient to impart a good flavor. Knead all these ingredients well together, cover up and allow them to stand 3 or 4 days in winter, 2 to 3 in summer. At the end of that time, knead them again, put the paste into wicker moulds, and leave the cheeses to drain until they are quite dry. When dry and firm, lay them on a board and leave them to acquire hardness gradually in a place of very moderate warmth. Should the heat be too great, as we have said, they will burst. When, in spite of all precautions, such accidents occur, the crevices of the burst cheeses are, in Germany, filled with curds and cream mixed, some being also put over the whole surface of the cheese, which is then dried again. As soon as the cheeses are thoroughly dry and hard, place them in barrels with green chickweed between each cheese. Let them stand for about 3 weeks, when they will be fit for use. Potatoes à la Barigoule. Peel some potatoes and boil them in a little water with some oil, pepper, salt, onions, and savory herbs. Boil them slowly so that they can absorb the liquor. When they are done, brown them in a stew pan in a little oil, and serve them to be eaten with oil and vinegar, pepper and salt. Potatoes broiled. Potatoes are served this way sometimes in Italy. They are first boiled in their skins, but not too long. They are then taken out and peeled, cut into thin slices, placed on a gridiron, and grilled till they are crisp. A little oil is poured over them when they are served. Potatoes à la Lyonnaise. First boil and then peel and slice some potatoes. Make some rather thin purée of onion. See sauce soubise. Pour this over the potatoes and serve. Another way is to first brown the slices of potatoes and then serve them with the onion sauce, with the addition of a little vinegar or lemon juice. Potatoes à la Provençale. Put a small piece of butter into a stew pan, or 3 tablespoonfuls of oil, 3 beads of garlic, the peel of 1/4 of a lemon, and some parsley, all chopped up very fine. Add a little grated nutmeg, pepper, and salt. Peel some small potatoes and let them stew till they are tender in this mixture. Large potatoes can be used for the purpose, only they must be cut tip into pieces. Add the juice of a lemon before serving. End of section 17. Section 18 of Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery by Arthur Gay Payne. Chapter 7. Vegetables. Substantial Vegetables, Part 2. Haricot beans. It is very much to be regretted that haricot beans are not more used in this country. There are hundreds of thousands of families who at the end of a year would be richer in purse and more healthy in body if they would consent to deviate from the beaten track and try haricot beans, not as an accompaniment to a dish of meat, but as an article of diet in themselves. The immense benefit derived in innumerable cases from a diet of beans is one of the strongest and most practical arguments in favor of vegetarianism. Meat eaters often boast of the plainness of their food, and yet wonder that they suffer in health. It is not an uncommon thing for a man to consult his doctor and to tell him, "I live very simply, nothing but plain roast or boiled." Medical men are all agreed on one point, and that is that haricot beans rank almost first among vegetables as a nourishing article of diet. In writing on this subject, Sir Henry Thompson observes, "Let me recall, at the close of these few hints about the haricot, the fact that there is no product of the vegetable kingdom so nutritious, holding its own in this respect as it well can, even against the beef and mutton of the animal kingdom." This is a very strong statement, coming as it does from so high an authority, and vegetarians would do well to hear it in mind when discussing the subject of vegetarianism with those who differ from them. Sir Henry proceeds as follows: "The haricot ranks just above lentils, which have been so much praised of late, and rightly, the haricot being to most palates more agreeable. By most stomachs, too, haricots are more easily digested than meat is, and consuming weight for weight, the eater feels lighter and less oppressed, as a rule, after the leguminous dish, while the comparative cost is very greatly in favour of the latter." To boil haricot beans proceed as follows. We refer, of course, to the dried white haricot beans, the best of which are those known as soissons. The beans should be soaked in cold water over night, and in the morning any that may be found floating on the top of the water should be thrown away. Suppose the quantity be a quart. Place these in a saucepan with 2 quarts of cold water, slightly salted. As soon as time water comes to the boil, move it so that the beans will only simmer gently. They must then continue simmering till they are tender. This generally takes about 3 hours, and if the water is hard, it is advisable to put in a tiny piece of soda. This is the simple way of cooking beans usually recommended in cookery books when they are served up with a dish of meat, such as a leg of mutton à la Bretonne, where the beans are served in some rich brown gravy containing fat. In vegetarian cookery, of course, we must proceed entirely differently, and there are various ways in which this nourishing dish can be served, as savoury and as appetizing, and indeed more so than if we had assistance from the slaughter-house. We will now proceed to give a few instances. In the first place, it will greatly assist the flavour of the beans if we boil with them 1 or 2 onions and a dessertspoonful of savoury herbs. Supposing, however, we have them boiled plain, take a large dry crust of bread and rub the outside well over with 1 or 2 beads of garlic. Place this crust of bread with the beans after they have been strained off, and toss them lightly about with the crust without breaking the beans. Remove the crust and moisten the beans while hot with a lump of butter. Add a brimming dessertspoonful of chopped blanched parsley. Squeeze the juice of a lemon over the whole and serve. Instead of butter we can add, as they always do in Italy, 2 or 3 tablespoonfuls of pure olive oil. Those who have conquered the unreasonable English prejudice against the use of oil will probably find this superior to butter. If the beans are served in the form of a purée, it is always best to boil a few onions with them and rub the onions through the wire sieve with the beans, taking care that the quantity of onion is not so large that it destroys and overpowers the delicate and delicious flavor of the beans themselves. Next, we would call attention to the importance of not throwing away the water in which the beans were boiled. This water contains far more nourishment than people are aware of, and throughout the length and breadth of France, where economy is far more understood than in this country, it is invariably saved to assist in making some kind of soup, and as our soup will of course be vegetarian, the advantage gained is simply incalculable. Flageolets. These are haricot beans in the fresh green state, and are rarely met with in this country, though they form a standing dish abroad. They are exceedingly nice, and can be cooked in a little butter like the French cook green peas. They are often flavoured with garlic, and chopped parsley can be added to them. Those who are fond of this vegetable in the fresh state can obtain them in tins from any high-class grocer, as the leading firms in this country keep them in this form for export. Peas, dried. Dried peas, like dried beans, contain a very great amount of nourishment. Indeed, in this respect, practically, dried beans, dried peas, and lentils may be considered equal. Dried peas are met with in two forms, the split yellow pea and those that are dried whole, green. Split peas are chiefly used in this country to make pea soup or purée of peas and peas pudding. We have already given recipes for the two former, and will now describe how to make peas pudding. Soak a quart of peas in water overnight, throwing away those in the morning that are found floating at the top. Drain them off and tie them up in a pudding cloth, taking care to leave plenty of room for the peas to swell. Put them into cold water and boil them till they are tender. This will take from 2 to 3 hours. When tender, take them out, untie the cloth, and rub them through a colander, or better still, a wire sieve. Now mix in a couple of ounces of butter with some pepper and salt. Flour the cloth well and tie it up again, and boil it for another hour, when it can be turned out and served. Peas pudding when eaten alone is improved by mixing in, at the same time as the butter, a dessertspoonful of dried powdered mint. Also, should you have the remains of any cold potatoes in the house, it is a very good way of using them up. A few savory herbs can be used instead of mint. Peas brose. Dr. Andrew, in writing to the Cyclopedia of Domestic Medicine, says, in the west of Scotland, especially in Glasgow, peas brose, as it is called, is made of the fine flour of the white pea, by forming it into a mass merely by the addition of boiling water and a little salt. It is a favorite dish with not only the working classes, but it is even esteemed by many of the gentry. It was introduced into fashion chiefly by the recommendation of Dr. Cleghorn, late professor of chemistry in Glasgow University. The peas brose is eaten with milk or butter, and is a sweet, nourishing article of diet, peculiarly fitted for persons of a costive habit and for children. Peas, dried whole, green. This is perhaps the best form with which we meet peas dried. When the best quality is selected, and care taken in their preparation, they are quite equal to fresh green peas when they are old. Indeed, many persons prefer them. Soak the peas overnight, throwing away those that float at the top. Put them into cold water, and when they boil, let the peas simmer gently till they are tender. The time varies much with the quality and the size of the peas, old ones requiring nearly 3 hours, others considerably less. When the peas are tender, throw in some sprigs, if possible, of fresh mint, and after a minute strain them off. Add pepper, salt, and about 2 ounces of butter to a quart of peas, though this is not absolutely necessary, and nearly a dessertspoonful of white powdered sugar. If you wish to have the peas as bright a green as freshly gathered ones, after you strain them off, you can mix them in a basin, before you add the butter, with a little piece of green vegetable coloring, sold in bottles by all grocers. The peas should then be put back in the saucepan for a few minutes to be made hot through, and then finish as directed above. Peas, dried, green, with cream. Boil the peas as before directed till they are quite tender, then strain them off and put them in a stewpan with 1 ounce of butter to every quart of peas, and toss them lightly about with a little pepper, salt, and grated nutmeg. Add to each quart of peas a quarter of a pint of cream and a dessertspoonful of powdered sugar. Surround the dish with fried or toasted bread. Lentils. Lentils are, comparatively speaking, a novel form of food in this country, though they have been used abroad for many years, and a recipe for cooking them will be found in a well-known work, published in Paris in 1846, entitled La cuisinière de la campagne et de la ville, ou Nouvelle Cuisine Économique, one of the most popular French cookery books ever published, and which in that year had reached a circulation of 80,000 copies. Recipes for boiled lentils and lentil soup are given in Cassell's Dictionary of Cookery, published in 1875, but it is stated in the introductory remarks that lentils are little used in England except as food for pigeons, and adds, they are seldom offered for sale. Since that date lentils have become an exceedingly popular form of food in many households, and vegetarians generally regard them as one of the most nourishing forms of food served at the table. There are two kinds of lentils, the German and Egyptian. The Egyptian are red and much smaller than the German, which are green. The former kind are generally used on the continent, in Italy and the south of France, while, as the name implies, the green lentils are more commonly used in Eastern Europe. Either kind, however, can be used for making soup and puree, recipes of which have already been given, as well as for the recipes in the present chapter. Lentils boiled. The lentils should be placed in soak overnight, and those that float should be thrown away. Suppose we have half a pint of lentils, they should be boiled in about a pint and a half of water. Boil them till they are tender, which will take about half an hour. Then drain them off and put them back in the saucepan for a few minutes with a little piece of butter. Squeeze over them the juice of half a lemon and serve hot. Some people make a little thickened sauce with yolks of eggs and a little butter and flour mixed with the water in which they are boiled. Lentils curried. Lentils are very nice curried. Boil the lentils as directed above till they are tender. When they are placed in a vegetable dish, make deep well in the centre and pour some thick curry sauce into it. See curry sauce. Lentils à la Provençale. Soak the lentils overnight and put them into a stewpan with 5 or 6 spoonfuls of oil, a little butter, some slices of onion, some chopped parsley, and a teaspoonful of mixed savory herbs. Stew them in this till the lentils are tender, and then thicken the sauce with yolks of eggs. Add a squeeze of lemon juice and serve. N.B. Haricot beans can be cooked in a similar manner. End of section 18. Section 19 of Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Betty B. Cassell's Vegetarian Cookery by Arthur Gay Payne. Chapter 8. Vegetables, fresh. Artichokes, French, plain boiled. Put the artichokes to soak in some well-salted water, upside down, as otherwise it is impossible to get rid of the insects that are sometimes hidden in the leaves. Trim off the ends of the leaves and the stalk, and all the hard leaves round the bottom should be pulled off. Put the artichokes into a saucepan of boiling water sufficiently deep to nearly cover them. The tips of the leaves are best left out. Add a little salt, pepper, and a spoonful of savory herbs to the water in which they are boiled. French cooks generally add a piece of butter. Boil them till they are tender. The time depends upon the size, but you can always tell when they are done by pulling out a single leaf. If it comes out easily, the artichokes are done. Drain them off, and remember in draining them to turn them upside down. Some kind of sauce is generally served with artichokes separately in a boat, such as butter sauce, sauce Allemande, or Dutch sauce. Artichokes broiled. Parboil the artichokes and take out the part known as the choke. In the hollow place a little chopped parsley and light-colored bread raspings soaked in olive oil. Place the bottoms of the artichokes on a gridiron with narrow bars over a clear fire, and serve them as soon as they are thoroughly hot through. Artichokes fried. The bottoms of artichokes after being boiled can be dipped in batter and fried. Artichokes à la Provençale. Parboil the artichokes and remove the choke, and put them in the oven in a tin with a little oil, pepper and salt, and 3 or 4 heads of garlic whole. Let them bake till they are tender, turning them over in the oil occasionally. Then take out the garlic and serve them with the oil poured over them, and add the juice of a lemon. Artichokes Jerusalem boiled plain. The artichokes must be first washed and peeled, and should be treated like potatoes in this respect. They should be thrown into cold water immediately, and it is best to add a little vinegar to the water. If the artichokes are young, throw them into boiling water, and they will become tender in about a quarter of an hour or 20 minutes. It is very important not to overboil them, as they turn a bad color. If any doubt exists as to the age of the artichokes, they had better be tested with a fork. Immediately they are tender, They should be drained and served. Old artichokes must be treated like old potatoes, i.e., put originally into cold water, and when they come to the boiling point, allowed to simmer till tender. But these are best mashed. When the artichokes have been drained, they can of course be served quite plain, but they are best sent to table with some kind of sauce poured over them, such as Allemande sauce, Dutch sauce, white sauce, or plain butter sauce. They are greatly improved in appearance after a spoonful of sauce has been poured over each artichoke, if a little blanched chopped parsley is sprinkled over them, and a few red specks made by coloring a pinch of bread crumbs by shaking them with a few drops of cochineal. Another very nice way of sending artichokes to table is to place all the artichokes together in a vegetable dish, and, after pouring a little white sauce over each artichoke, to place a fresh boiled bright green Brussels sprout between each. The white and green contrast very prettily. Jerusalem artichokes fried. Peel and slice the artichokes very thin. Throw these slices into smoking hot oil in which a frying basket has been placed. As soon as the artichokes are of bright golden brown color, lift out the frying basket, shake it while you pepper and salt the artichokes, and serve very hot. They can be eaten with thin brown bread and butter and lemon juice, and form a sort of vegetarian whitebait. Artichokes mashed. These are best made from old artichokes. They must be rubbed through a wire sieve and the strings left behind. It is best to mash them up with a little butter, and a spoonful or two of cream is a very great improvement. Asparagus, boiled. Cut the asparagus all the same length by bringing the green points together, and then trimming the stalks level with a sharp knife. Throw the asparagus into boiling salted water. Time from 15 to 25 minutes, according to thickness. Serve on dry toast and send butter sauce to table separate in a tureen. Beans, broad, plain boiled. Broad beans, if eaten whole, should be quite young. They should be thrown into boiling water, salted. They require about 20 minutes to boil before they are tender. Serve with parsley and butter sauce. Broad beans mashed. When broad beans get old, the only way to serve them is to have them mashed. Boil them and remove the skins, then mash them up with a little butter, pepper and salt, and rub them through a wire sieve. Make them hot and serve. You can, if you like, boil a few green onions and a pinch of savory herbs with the beans, and rub these through the wire sieve as well. This dish is very cheap and very nourishing. Very young beans, like very young peas, are more nice than economical. Beans à la poulette. Boil some young beans till they are tender, and put them into a saucepan with a little butter, sugar, pepper, and salt, and sufficient flour to prevent the butter cooking oily. Stew them in this a short time, i.e., till they appear to begin to boil, as the water from the beans will mix with the butter and flour and look like thin butter sauce. Thicken this with 1 or 2 yolks of eggs, and serve. Beans à la bourgeoisie. Place the beans in a saucepan with a piece of butter, a small quantity of shallot chopped fine, and a teaspoonful of savory herbs. Toss them about in this a little time, and then add a little water, sufficient to moisten them so that they can stew. Add a little sugar, and when tender thicken the water with some beaten up egg. Beans, French, plain boiled. French beans are only good when fresh gathered, and the younger they are the better. When small they can be boiled whole, in which case they only require the tips cut off and the string that runs down the side removed. When they are more fully grown they will require, in addition to being trimmed in this manner, to be cut into thin strips, and when very old it will be found best to cut them slanting. They must be thrown into boiling salted water and boiled till they are tender. The time for boiling varies with the age. Very young ones will not take more than a quarter of an hour, and if old ones are not tender in half an hour, they had better be made into a purée. As soon as the beans are tender, drain them off and serve them very hot. The chief point to bear in mind, if we wish to have our beans nice, is they must be eaten directly they are drained from the water in which they are boiled. They are spoilt by what is called being kept hot, and possess a marvellous facility of getting cold in a very short space of time. In vegetarian cookery, when beans are eaten without being an accompaniment to meat, Some form of fat is desirable. When the beans are drained, we can add either butter or oil. When a lump of maître d'hôtel butter is added, they form what the French call haricots verts à la maître d'hôtel. In this case, a slight suspicion of garlic may be added by rubbing the stew pan in which the French beans are tossed together with the maître d'hôtel butter. When oil is added, a little chopped parsley will be found an improvement, as well as pepper, salt, and a suspicion of nutmeg. French beans are very nice flavored with oil and garlic, and served in a border of macaroni. French bread pudding. When French beans are very old, they are sometimes made into a pudding as follows. They must be trimmed, cut up, boiled, with or without the addition of a few savory herbs. They must be then mashed in a basin, tied up in a well buttered and then floured cloth, and boiled for some time longer. The pudding can then be turned out. A still better way of making a French bean pudding is to rub the beans through the wire sieve, leaving the strings behind, flavoring the pudding with a few savory herbs, a little sugar, pepper, and salt, and, if liked, a suspicion of garlic. Add 1 or 2 well beaten up eggs, and put the mixture in a round pudding basin, and bake it till it sets. This can be turned out on the centre of the dish, and a few young French beans placed around the base to ornament it, in conjunction with some pieces of fried bread cut in pretty shapes. Broccoli. Trim the outer leaves off a broccoli and cut off the stalk even, so that it will stand upright. Soak the broccoli in salt and water for some time, in order to get rid of any insects. Throw the broccoli into boiling water that has been salted, and boil it till it is tender, the probable time for young broccoli being about a quarter of an hour. It should be served on a dish with the flour part uppermost, and butter sauce, sauce Allemande, or Dutch sauce can be served separately or poured over the surface. When several heads of broccoli are served at once, it is important to cut the stalks flat, as directed, before boiling. After they have been thoroughly drained upside down, they should be placed on the dish, flour part uppermost, and placed together as much as possible to look like one large broccoli. If sauce is poured over them, the sauce should be sufficiently thick to be spread, and every part of the flour should be covered. Half a teaspoonful of chopped blanched parsley may be sprinkled over the top, and improves the appearance of the dish. N.B. We would particularly call attention to the importance of draining broccoli and cauliflower very thoroughly, especially when any sauce is served with the broccoli. When the dish is cut into, nothing looks more disagreeable than to see the white sauce running off the broccoli into green water at the bottom of the dish. Broccoli greens. The outside leaves of broccoli should not be thrown away, but eaten. Too often they are trimmed off at the greengrocer's or at the market, and we presume utilized for the purpose of feeding cattle. They can be boiled exactly like white cabbages, and are equal to them, if not superior in flavor. To boil them, see cabbage, white, large. Brussels sprouts. These must be first washed in cold water, and all the little pieces of decayed leaves trimmed away. Throw them into boiling salted water. The water must be kept boiling the whole time, without a lid on the saucepan, and if the quantity of water be sufficiently large not to be taken off the boil by the sprouts being thrown in, they will be sent to table of a far brighter green color than otherwise. In order to ensure this, throw in the sprouts a few at a time, picking out the big ones to throw in first. Sprouts, as soon as they are tender, probable time a quarter of an hour, should be drained and served quickly. When served as a dish by themselves, after being drained off, they can be placed in a stew pan with a little butter, pepper, salt, nutmeg, and lemon juice. They can then be served with toasted or fried bread. Cabbage, plain, boiled. Ordinary young cabbages should be first trimmed by having the outside leaves removed, the stalks cut off, and then should be cut in halves and allowed to soak some time in salt and water. They should be thrown into plenty of boiling water. The water should be kept boiling and uncovered. As soon as they are tender, they should be strained off and served immediately. Young summer cabbages will not take longer than a quarter of an hour, or even less. Old cabbages take nearly double that time. It is impossible to lay down any exact rule with regard to time. Savoys generally take about half an hour. The large white cabbages met with in the west of England take longer and require a different treatment. When cabbage is served as a dish by itself, it will be found a great improvement to add either butter or oil to moisten the cabbage after it is thoroughly drained off. In order to insure the butter not oiling, but adhering to the cabbage, it is best after the butter is added, and while you mix it with the cabbage, to shake the flour dredger 2 or 3 times over the vegetable. In Germany many add vinegar and sugar to the cabbage. Cabbage large white. In the west of England cabbages grow to an immense size, owing probably to the moist heat, and have been exhibited in agricultural shows over 20 pounds in weight, and as big as an 18-gallon cask. These cabbages are best boiled as follows. After being cut up and thoroughly washed, it will be found that the greater part of the cabbage resembles what in ordinary cabbage would be called stalk, and of course the leaves vary very considerably in thickness from the hard stalk end up to the leaf. Have plenty of boiling water ready salted. Now cut off the stalk part where it is thickest and throw this in first. Wait till the water comes to the boil again and let it boil for a few minutes. Then throw in the next thickest part, and again wait till the water reboils, and so on, reserving the thin leafy part to be thrown in last of all. By this means, and this only, do we get the cabbage boiled uniformly. Had we thrown in all at once, one of 2 things would be inevitable. Either the stalk would be too hard to be eaten, or the leafy part overboiled. A large white cabbage takes about an hour to boil tender, and a piece of soda should be added to the water. When the cabbage is well drained, it can be served either plain or moistened, and made to look oily by the addition of a piece of butter. As the cabbage is very white, the dish is very much improved by the addition of a little chopped parsley sprinkled over the top, not for the sake of flavor, but appearance. Cabbage and cream. Ordinary cabbages are sometimes served stewed with a little cream. They should be first parboiled, then the moisture squeezed from them, and then they must be put in a stew pan with a little butter, pepper, salt, and nutmeg, and a spoonful of flour should be shaken over the cabbage in order to prevent the butter being too oily. When the cabbage is stewed till it is perfectly tender, add a few spoonfuls of cream, stir up and make the whole thoroughly hot, and serve with fried or toasted bread. Cabbage red. Red cabbages are chiefly used for pickling. They are sometimes served fresh. They should be cut across so that the cabbage shreds, boiled till they are tender, the moisture thoroughly extracted, and then put into a stew pan with a little butter, pepper, and salt, and a few shakes of flour from the flour dredger. After stirring for 10 minutes or a quarter of an hour, squeeze the juice of a lemon over them and serve. Carrots boiled. When carrots are boiled and served as a course by themselves, they ought to be young. This dish is constantly met with abroad in early summer, but is rarely seen in England, except at the tables of vegetarians. The carrots should be trimmed, thoroughly washed, and if necessary, slightly scraped, and the point at the end, which looks like a piece of string, should be cut off. They should be thrown into fast boiling water, salted, in order to preserve their color. When tender, they can be served with some kind of good white sauce, or sauce Allemande, or Dutch sauce. Perhaps this latter sauce is best of all, as it looks like rich custard. Part of the red carrot should show uncovered by any sauce. They are best placed in a circle, and the thick sauce poured in the centre. A very little chopped, blanched parsley can be sprinkled on the top of the sauce. In making Dutch sauce for carrots, use lemon juice instead of tarragon vinegar. Carrots fried. Fried carrots can be made from full-grown carrots. They must be first parboiled and then cut in slices. They must then be dipped in well beaten up egg, and then covered with fine dry breadcrumbs, and fried a nice brown in smoking hot oil in a frying basket. The slices of carrots should be peppered and salted before being dipped in the egg. Carrots mashed. When carrots are very old they are best mashed. Boil them for some time, then cut them up and rub them through a wire sieve. They can be pressed in a basin and made hot by being steamed. A little butter, pepper, and salt should be added to the mixture. A very pretty dish can be made by means of mixing mashed carrots with mashed turnips. They can be shaped in a basin, and with a little ingenuity can be put into red and white stripes. The effect is something like the top of a striped tent. End of section 19.